Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at BTV World. Today on our show, we'll be addressing this extremely important, rather critical issue of food wastage, which inevitably leads to food insecurity in Pakistan. We'll not only be talking about its root causes, but we'll also be delving upon the impact that it in turn does have, not only on the Pakistani economy, but at the society at large too. In this regard, at the outset, it's very important to then, of course, understand and appreciate this very simple basic fact, which is that how does climate change disrupt agricultural production, and that in turn actually fuels this issue of food wastage in the Pakistani society. This is something upon which we'll be shedding light today. In this regard, we'll also be talking about other causes, be it those which then relate to, of course, this growing issue at a farm level, be it those which then relate to the distribution level, or for that matter with regards to consumer, lifestyle preferences, so to speak, as well. When it comes to proposing solutions to this very issue of doing away with, food wastage and overall food insecurity in the Pakistani society, in this regard, we'll also be talking about the need for us to perhaps more diligently work so as to have a more, of a cohesive kind of a food supply chain, and then, of course, in this regard, to also do away with infrastructural deficiencies, so to speak, as well. Overall, we'll also be talking about the need for there to be perhaps stricter regulation of laws and policies when it comes to better complying with our food waste management standards. And of course, in this regard, we'll also be shedding light upon the various initiatives taken by the government so as to not only overall improve the agricultural landscape, but generally, in this regard, indirectly to do away with the issue of food wastage and food insecurity too. All of this today, that too with an extremely pertinent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Arif Nadeem Saab. He is the strategy advisor of Pakistan Agriculture Coalition, and he's also been the former Secretary Government of Punjab Agriculture, Irrigation and Health Department. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Alongside him, I have Ms. Sadia Salman. She is the owner of a food business and she's also a nutritionist. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. My third panelist for today's show is Ms. Nazifa Butt, who is the Director of Climate Action and Sustainability, WWF. Assalamu alaikum ji, and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Pakistan has incredible potential to overcome food insecurity and reduce food wastage. With growing awareness, many consumers are already making eco-friendly and healthier lifestyle choices, which are key to addressing these challenges. By embracing sustainable practices like reducing food waste at home, supporting local farmers, and opting for more plant-based diets, individuals are directly contributing to reduce food insecurity. Moreover, countries like Brazil and Ethiopia have implemented successful food security programs, offering valuable lessons for other countries. By adopting similar strategies, such as improving food distribution networks and enhancing storage facilities, Pakistan can make great strides in ensuring food is available for all. Climate-smart agriculture and sustainable practices are also becoming more popular in Pakistan, helping combat the effects of climate change. Together, these initiatives are paving the way for a more food secure and waste-free future in Pakistan.
Food waste is one of the most critical issues faced by the world today. Not only is it aggravating climate change, but is also enhancing the world hunger. For countries like Pakistan, the situation is even worse, where 36 million tons of food is wasted annually, thus leaving a major chunk of the population hungry and malnutrition. Major part of this food waste comes from large gatherings, weddings and restaurants, etc., where we see that it is a common pattern that major portions of this food is dumped into the landfills. So when this food is dumped into the landfills, it produces methane, which is a highly toxic greenhouse gas that produces significantly to global warming. Apart from the production of greenhouse gases, the environmentally damaging aspects include the wastage of water and resources used to actually produce that food that is ultimately landing up into the landfills. So on the broader horizon, we see that something as petty as food waste that people do not even pay much attention upon is leading to these greater problems such as global warming and climate change that is ultimately impacting a major chunk of our population. The responsibility of combating food waste lies both on the government and the individuals who can work collaboratively to resolve this matter. because every meal saved is a step towards a more sustainable and just world.
Welcome back from the report. Sir, now to get the conversation started with you, at a very basic level, when we do talk about this growing issue of food wastage, for the benefit of the audience, could you tell us that, what are those basic factors, be it at a farm level, be it at a distribution level, or be it even at a very basic consumer level, which actually contribute to it? Because we do understand at some level or the other, these factors might be different in various regions all over the country.
Fatma, thank you very much.
You're most
I'm
welcome.
extremely grateful that on a very, very critical issue like food security, you've given me an opportunity to come and explain this.
You're
thing.
most welcome, sir.
As food security is basically an issue of not only excess, it's an issue of affordability, it's an issue of nutrition, nutritious food reaching your entire population. you know.
Right.
So it is. And that is why some of the countries like Singapore and others, they are food secure. Saudi Arabia, they don't grow that much. And we, in spite of the fact that we are sitting on one of the most fertile plains, which is the Indo-Gangetic plain, and we have the largest irrigation system. That's our endowment, and we stretch north to south.
Right.
And with 46% of our population living in the rural area, a very hardy farming community, we are.
Our stakes are very high.
Our stakes are very high, but are in actual fact, we are in a precarious situation, I must say, when you look at the malnourishment and all those things. And we were the first ones out of all who were able to achieve food security by 1966. The unfortunate part is that we've been sitting on our hunches since then, since the 60s. We've not, because we really loved what we did achieve at that particular, we keep talking about that. But incidentally, we've never moved beyond. The world has moved beyond that particular point.
So, but why is that the case then? Then because if we were to then bifurcate this of course is a very multifaceted issue. It would just not relate with perhaps the harvesting techniques. It would also be attributable to our infrastructure deficiencies and so many other things, so to speak. But which do you feel would be the biggest reason for this?
But I mean, the key issues, if you really look at it, it was basically the seed. I mean, even today, we have world-class yields in wherever we've achieved the seed issue. We've solved that issue. Our maize currently is world standard. I mean, we are having a world. On the other hand, our wheat is around 30 mons, whereas the world, even next door, is about 10 mons beyond us per acre. I mean, keeping all other things constant. I mean, that's what so you got to grow according to the global yields, number one.
Right.
You got to use the top quality seed. Not only you got to use the right kind of machines, the world has moved towards precision agriculture, and there's a monosem machine which ensures that every seed which is dropped, you have not only row to row distance, it maintains seed to seed distance, so that every seed has sufficient area in which to grow.
Right, on which I'll come to you, madam, and I would want you to add to this. So when we do talk about this more so from the viewpoint of food businesses, a lot of times we also see, and this is something which is rampant worldwide, businesses would be producing food and that food would be good to consume, it would be fit for human consumption, but for some reason or the other it wouldn't be sold out, which means of course that it has to be wasted, which again adds to the problem. So how do you, as owner of a food business yourself, propose can we get past this? Because in the West we do see, more particularly in countries like US, Australia, even in UK for that matter, food which actually ends up getting wasted, they very intelligently redistribute it. So by way of analogy, why can we not do that in Pakistan?
So there are three kinds of wastage for food, and in Pakistan particularly, I was reading this report and it said that 40% of the food which is produced, like the raw materials, is wasted. So I mean, that's a huge number. And keeping in mind the malnutrition and all those issues going on in Pakistan, I think that needs to be really reduced. So as a business owner as a food business owner, so we have taken some steps, like our small contribution, what we can make. But the three top wastages are from the storage point of view, then the distribution of the food, and thirdly comes the consumption. So consumption comes last. The first thing is how to store it. So once the produce is there, I mean, we need to look at it technologically, like sir just said, that we need to have innovative methods of storing it properly and then distributing it properly, keeping the temperature as it should be. For example, tomatoes, they need a certain temperature to be distributed throughout the country. So storage and then distribution, and then consumption. So
Right.
consumption
But then
wise,
do you not feel, Sadia, that this is something that which should equally transcend on the consumer as well? Yes, you're doing your bit as well, but once you've sold that product, then you need to also equally educate the consumer in this regard too. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Nazifa, and I would want you to add to this further. So overall, when we do talk about this issue with regards to climate change, we also understand the fact climate change at a very basic level that does have that impact of disrupting agricultural productivity. But as somebody who has worked in this area for quite some time, how do you at a very basic level then add this to the problem of growing food wastage and of course food insecurity in the country today?
So Pakistan is a climate vulnerable country. We are seeing torrential rains, weather pattern changes and droughts and floods. You know, in the 2022 floods, you know, the cropland was devastated at a large scale. So therefore, there is a huge impact on the crop yield, definitely. But the temperature rises, they are also, you know, making sure that, you know, the soil quality is degrading and the soils are becoming drier. So the fertility rate is also impacted. And then the carbon dioxide, the carbon content in the air, that is also hampering the nutritious value and the protein content in soya and wheat and maize.
Right.
We also tend to, you know that, you know, about 5% wheat and 6% of maize crops are going to be, you know, decreasing in the next coming years, of almost a decade.
Right.
I happened to go to Tharparkar this year and I figured out and found out that about 20 droughts took place in the last 50 years only. And about 50% of the population over there is malnourished because even the livestock is, you know, disturbed and their mortality rates are reduced due to heat.
Right. But one thing, Nazifa, I think here what is very important to then also address is the fact in the countries like the US, we do see that actively steps are being taken so as to then modify the agricultural landscape in line with the changing climatic events. Is this something which has been given due consideration in our country too, like perhaps adopting practices, having crop rotation in place? Is this something that we are focused upon?
Ideally, in pockets and fragmented ways, yes, it's happening, but not at large. Because the Pakistan's Food Security Policy 2018, it almost focuses on the best agricultural practices, but they're not being followed stringently. So I think there's a huge gap there.
And that is something that we need to work
Yes.
on. Right, Nazifa, your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, sir, and I would want you to add to this further. So considering, of course, the fact that the show is about the society at large, do you not feel here that it's equally important to look at this issue from the perspective of our respective socio-cultural norms? How do you feel do the socio-cultural norms of any society actually dictate, you know, how efficiently or how diligently can any society then solve this issue of food wastage? Because a lot of times we see that issues like these, they have a very strong link with the societal norms per se too. So where do you see that link with regards to our society today?
Fatma, you've raised a very, very important issue. I mean, I normally, one now gets a lot of stories of this sort, that in case you go to Germany and you order something, and at the end of the day, you leave 60% of that on your platter. The waiter who's going to come, he's going to give you a look which you'll remember for the rest of your life. Actually, they in actual fact are very, very, they like to, won't like to serve you again.
Indeed, that's very rightly put by yourself. And in this regard, we have also seen countries where there's this very famous concept of having community and communal fridges where people, more particularly homeless people, they can actually resort to so as to have their meals. And this way, you not only end up doing away with hunger, but you also, of course, on the side, do away with food wastage too. When we do talk about this with regards to the issue of packaging, with regards to ensuring that food storage is done in an efficient manner, something which she earlier said, and not in a way which then, of course, indirectly hampers either the quality, the appearance of the food, so to speak. So in this regard, how do you propose can we have that perfect mix of packaging? Because this again would, you know, require technological advancements, so to speak.
Fatma, basically these are issues which are driven by the consumers. It is the consumer choice. They wouldn't buy it in case you send something which doesn't appear.
No, but sir, in our countries, like we do see fruits being sold out which are not very rotten, yes.
Now this
mishappened.
No, that's because our consumers basically, there's a market failure, and these guys, I mean, things, people can get away with anything, but nowhere you can't sell any of these things unless they are HACCP qualified, unless they've been grown up in Global Gap certified farms, unless they've been transported logistically in IFS certified farms. No guarantee is of value. And the best thing which the private sector told us, you can't send it in crates, for heaven's sake. The family size is 2 or 1.
Yes.
Right.
So
Small
it's
cartons.
4 packs, 4 mangoes to a pack, and that too, the ripening has to be day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. That is how, as they come out of the container, that is how they are supposed to be
It needs to be
packed.
very clear.
Very, very exact. And that is why if I had a choice, I would try to ride on the tail coats of one of these big guys, because there are 5, 6 companies which are actually controlling, monopolizing this trade, and we need to bring them in.
Right.
That would stabilize the value chain.
Right.
You know, and
so,
that is
Sadia, how would you
Exactly.
comment on this? Yes, we aren't doing that because we do see that contrary to, of course, our society, there are so many other countries which actually sell off fruits, even vegetables, which might not be that fresh or might not be the best looking that way as well. And people do end up buying them more so at heavy discounted prices. So, do you not feel here again that cultural resistance to this practice that needs to be done away with so as to combat this issue of food wastage?
This is all actually related to awareness. So if we know that we want these kind of fruits in our homes and we don't care about what they look like, so basically we can, you know, it's about awareness. I think the consumers need to be aware that there is the nutritious value will be the same, you know, it will last for the same amount of time. So there's no reason why we shouldn't take it. And also, like you said, it should be discounted. So we can actually work on that. But awareness, I don't think that we
Awareness
have
is the
enough.
key, right.
Yeah, because people are looking for the perfect apple, for the perfect banana.
So this goes
even
back to a typical socio-cultural norm, something that I was
Yes.
earlier discussing with sir, and also we've seen world over, you know, biotechnology companies, they've actually used
Yes.
fruits which might not have been in the best of shape or just have been discarded off to actually produce fashion articles.
Yeah.
But when we talk about education, I think this is something on which I would want you to comment from your own viewpoint of being a nutritionist. How do you feel can dietitians and nutritionists like yourself be then, of course, involved in these educational and informative campaigns? We do know that yes, social media has that power to change perspectives. How can people like yourself then mobilize the power of social media to do just that? We do generally see a lot of, you know, cooking classes and all these health and wellness tips making their way to social media, but what about also focusing on the issue of food wastage, so to speak, so as to actually teach people how to store food properly and how to waste it off properly too?
Fatma, I think it's not only just a role that they can play, it is their duty, because that's where their expertise is. And if they're not going to help create this awareness, then there's no point in just making diet plans all day long. I mean, it's one of the basics that they need to teach to their consumers, their followers and their clients, especially people who have some influence. And we've been making some videos about that. Our page is full of it, like how to store food at home. So we basically need to go to the grassroots level where, you know, even in the homes, so to speak. I mean, sir talked about these international big chains, and that's very, very important. But when
Right.
the produce has finally reached your home, how to store it, how to, you know, consume it, make a proper checklist when you go to the grocery store, for example. Do not just buy everything randomly.
Right.
You know, plan out the entire week's meals and know what you need and just get that. So storage will be easier, consumption will be better, and wastage will be less. that
Right,
way.
hopefully. But when we talk about this from the viewpoint of education per se, more particularly education institutions, do you not feel here, Nazifa, that education institutions, they also have a very pivotal role to play? Yes, we are catering to all these issues at a household level, like Sadia just very rightly so mentioned. But what about doing it so, you know, maybe perhaps with regards to teaching children about the importance of the same at a very young age? So in this regard, how do you feel can educational institutions instill that basic values of sustainability in children?
I think youth are the future of the country anyways, and I think their mindsets are fresh, and anything taught to them is going to last long, and then they take it home with them. So we at our organization, we're also working with plenty of institutions all across Pakistan where we're trying to teach students and campuses in order to come up with practices that are going to curb food waste and food loss. And there should be, you know, different campaigns and drives for food sharing and food donation
Right.
with the youth as well, because that's going to, you know, create an impact at a larger scale. Also, it should be, you know, topics like food waste and food loss, they should be included in the curriculum also, because they're very important. important. And not only the students, but the faculty members also need to be
course.
trained, and workshops need to be arranged for them.
Right, and
definitely.
also not only that, I think from the corporate world view angle, this is something that is so important.
Definitely.
World over, we see that corporations and multinationals, they are subjected to very stringent laws, and they are even fined if they, if it's found that their work has a negative impact on the environment. Why can't we not have similar penalties here? Sir, coming towards you, when we do talk about this growing issue of food wastage and of course so many other related issues, here it's equally important that we also shed light upon the issue of usage of pesticides and the residue that it does in turn leave on foods, more particularly on fruits and vegetables. So to what extent do you feel has this issue been taken care of by in terms of our laws, in terms of our policies? Because in this regard we do understand that we have the agricultural pesticides ordinance in place. How would you comment on its respective enforcement?
Look at Punjab government took the lead, and they took this lead way back in 96, 97, 98. In actual fact, there used to be a huge amount of adulterated pesticides which used to be sold, around 3 billion out of a trade of 13 billion, But they cleansed the market, A very brave effort, at that time. And later, I think today, there's a list which they issue of safe pesticides which can be used, which do not have. They've also built a laboratory here near Kalasha Kaku. You can send any fruit, any vegetable, anywhere, and they'll tell you if there are any pesticide residues on that particular thing. Because when we're talking of pesticide lab, it will be measuring things in millions. But when you're talking of pesticide residue lab, we're talking of trillions parts per trillion actually. So that it's a very high, very sophisticated lab built there to. That facility is there for anybody to have it tested, But again, basically all this is driven by the consumers actually.
Right.
And the most stringent thing is that nobody in the developed world would ever allow this sort of thing to ever come onto the table,
Right.
So I think it's the government regulations, and I'm sure Sadia, because she is herself into this particular business, we at times we need to be very, very careful while regulating that we do not over-regulate.
Regulate, right.
Because
So
that's
in this
again is
regard,
the
I
tendency,
think since you are talking about the government's initiatives, I think it's very pertinent to then also of course mention this initiative taken by the Punjab government so as to then of course stabilize the prices of bread and flour, so to speak. So when we talk about initiatives like these, how effective would you evaluate those to be when it comes to doing away with the problem of not only inflation but food insecurity in the larger picture? Are they or are they not then attacking the root causes of food insecurity?
It's a very difficult thing. I mean, today when we have this high inflation, and there's our economy is stagnating, there are insufficient jobs which are coming up in the market, because actually we did a small analysis, and I'm talking way back in 06. We thought that in case the economy grows at 6%, that's the time when 1 million jobs will be thrown up into the market, and out of them 85% would be in the private sector. But today our economy, if you look at, our population is growing at 2.1. Our growth rate, the latest I saw was 2.4, now it's 0.3, so that means there's hardly any jobs, and with the youth bulge which you have, the situation is becoming precarious. That is why every television, I mean your newspapers, you pick up and you talk, see an anchor, they're all talking about inflation, they're talking
course.
about how it is pinching the poor man. Now that has
The
become
common man.
the common man.
The common
And
man.
that vulnerable population is something which is staring, and that is what the government needs to do.
Right, sir, your point is noted. On which I'll come to you, Ms. Sadia, and I would want you to comment on this, but more so from your own viewpoint of being an owner of a food business. So when we do talk about the need for businesses like yourself to very proactively embrace sustainable practices, whether those which then relate with their food supply chains or even otherwise, why still do we see this hesitancy in the Pakistani business community to do just the same? A lot of times we see that, businesses might not be open to doing so just because they feel that it might have an hidden cost to it. How would you debunk that myth, and why do you feel that in the times that we do live in today, this is the need of the hour? Because a lot of times we see more proactively, especially the Gen Z, they are very invested in buying from brands or even businesses who are, you know, sustainability driven.
Yes, Fatma, it's true. Like, this is the talk of the day. Like, everybody wants to go for you know, paper cups, and instead of plastic, we want to move to glass bottles. So the new generation is definitely more informed and aware. And you asked about our business. So basically, yes, there is a hidden cost. It's a like a really big investment, but it's a one-time investment. So for example, in our supply chain, we have introduced kitchen appliances which are eco-friendly, which saves some energy from electricity. It also obviously helps with electricity bills, you know how it is these days. Secondly, we have also installed a water recycling plant. For example, whatever is washed in the commercial kitchen, the water is recycled and is used again for washing. So the washing, you know, so it's like we are not wasting too much water, like the water, you know, we are already short of water, the entire planet is talking about it, but in our country, I feel very sad to see the way we waste water. Like literally, we won't even put the tap off while brushing our teeth. Literally.
Lifestyle modifications and making these small changes,
Exactly.
they are most important, not
They're
only at a
important,
household
yes.
level, at a school level, even when you are on the go, even when you are
Everywhere,
traveling.
personal level. So basically in our kitchen, that's what we do, water recycling. We also have these eco-friendly appliances. So you rightly said, like, there is a hidden cost and there's a big cost, but it finally pays off.
It pays off in terms of also improving your brand reputation.
Exactly.
A lot of times businesses use this very intelligently to market themselves better. Coming towards you, Ms. Nazifa, I would want you to add to this further. So according to the stats of this report by the UN, they are findings which suggest that 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, they are associated with food which is not consumed, which of course implies that at a very basic level, this issue of food wastage is very deeply linked with greenhouse gas emissions. So as a climate change expert, do you not feel that at a very basic level we then need to have perhaps more cohesive policies in this regard, to policies which not only address this issue of food wastage but do it vis-a-vis the issue of tackling climate change as well?
So yes, there's a very strong connection between climate change and food insecurity. Pakistan suffers a great deal. 36% of the population is food insecure in Pakistan, first of all. And then secondly, when we see that there are so many emissions, greenhouse gas emissions come out not only from the food waste through the landfill and open dumping that we do, because a lot of organic waste is being dumped and methane gas is released out. So that is not only the single source, but also if there are food losses, food wastages, then there'll be more demand for food production. And since, you know, the food productions and businesses, they will consume more energy, then more fossil fuels, and then more emissions into the air. So of course, if we are going towards policy changes, we need to integrate not only the best agricultural practices, but also making sure that the food that we are producing is nutritious and has and controls food losses and food wastages are controlled.
But in this regard, when it also comes to tackling this issue of having perhaps a more resilient food supply chain, what are the issues you feel that we do need to address in this regard, working towards having more adaptive agricultural practices?
Yes, definitely, because we were working on a project and we came across that, you know, milk is a very important food product. 20% of milk is wasted in Pakistan because of the storage and transportation, because it's inadequate. So, you know, we need to have proper storage areas, coolants and transportation facilities. They can be solar driven. We are, you know, a country blessed with solar energy, and I think we should utilize it and harness it. So that should be, you know, included into that. Another thing is that we need to move towards more climate resilient crops, move towards drip irrigation, soil testing, improving the soil fertility rate.
Even integrated pest management.
Yes, definitely. That is a part and parcel of the agricultural practices, and train the farmers, because a lot of farmers might not be interested or, you know, not aware of the current technological practices that can be introduced and make better practices, and also going towards, you know, less thirsty crops, because we are a water stressed country. And, you know, going to maize and, you know, legumes, that is just going to help us in a lot of ways.
Right. So these are the changes that we do need to make in this regard. So coming towards you and moving towards the end of the show, so when we do talk about the various initiatives of the government, in this regard we do understand that, you know, not one, rather quite a few initiatives have been introduced. In Punjab particularly, I would like to quote this initiative of Farmers Happy, Punjab Happy, the purpose of which is to give interest-free loans and subsidies to farmers. And then we also have the Green Punjab initiative in this regard, which includes usage of solar tube wells and other modern agricultural practices. The purpose of overall is to transform the agricultural sector. But when it comes to implementing all these initiatives, what role do you feel can the private sector then play in this regard?
The private sector has to be taken on board in case you want to optimize. The government wants to optimize whatever they want to do, they need to bring them on board, and they're making a brave effort now. I mean, this realization is definitely there, and they are trying to bring them on board so that number one, they bring them.
Right.
The second thing is, Nazifa mentioned certain things like drip irrigation. Today, the world, every time you till the soil, you're actually releasing carbon, and that is so. The world has there is a concept of zero tillage. Do little agriculture. That is the new technology, rejuvenating agriculture, where you preserve the topsoil. You prepared it once and you use it for multi crops. And because nature is, I mean, we are actually destroying the topsoil actually. And that is why we got to use so much of chemical fertilizers and water. The water retention capacity, the nutrient utilization capacity are all linked to the quality of topsoil.
Right.
The organic matter, I mean, the organic matter should be around 0.3%. Our soils are deficient to the extent of 0.03%.
Right. So in this regard, we must also, of course, then consider this whole issue with regards to issues of malnutrition, or for that matter stunting, that it may lead to. A lot of times we see that if people, they are not given adequate food, it might cause malnutrition in them. And to address this very issue, we've recently seen that the Punjab government has started the Punjab School Meal Program too, which aims to provide meal packets for students so as to better address the nutritional deficiencies. So how would you look at this particular project of the government, so to speak, and why do you feel are projects like these extremely necessary when it comes to tackling issues of malnutrition?
Now, this is a very good initiative actually. I mean, but we have a large population of children who are out of school, so we need to address that also. And that is why a country which can boast of being, I mean, Karachi has the largest philanthropy in the world actually. We are very proud of this particular thing. And even Lahore actually, I mean, if you go to any of the hospitals.
I think, sir, that's true for the entire country.
I mean, this is a very, very, I mean, these are the people, and that is what we need to harness actually.
Right.
It has to be a multi-pronged approach in which you got to bring them on board, and the landscape is so huge that the more the merrier, I would say. I mean, everybody's got to put in its bit. The government has to put in its bit, but the civil society, the parents, the private sector, the philanthropists, everybody's got to join hands.
All stakeholders need to be on the same page.
And the private sector.
Right, sir, your point is noted. Coming towards you, Sadia. So I think sir has then in detail explained everything, that the responsibilities then vested upon each and every one of us, be it individuals, be it corporations, be it businesses, civil society, and of course the state itself too. But how do you feel can we then use technology, that too in a very intelligent, constructive manner, to actually then execute this responsibility? We have seen world over technology, more particularly even artificial intelligence, be used in so many sectors. So why not, by way of analogy, in Pakistan too?
Yes, absolutely. Artificial intelligence is the next way forward. I mean, and the food businesses are probably one of the biggest businesses all over the world, right? So if they do not inculcate this technology, they'll be, really left behind. So for example, at our company, I can tell you that we are working towards a paperless environment. That's a small step we took, an initiative after COVID happened, and we made a lot of changes, in the system. So we are trying to move from, paper orders and, all those inventories that we have, and all the assessments that we do for our clients, and everything is now on software. And like you said, technology is the new way forward. And so we are just trying our little bit.
By using integrated apps.
Exactly. So everything is out there. We just need to, spread awareness. That's exactly like sir said, consumers and multinationals, all kinds of small businesses like we have, everybody needs to pitch in. And so our small initiative was to make our office and our clinic paper free, and so we could save a little bit, do our part. So.
And perhaps publicize that too, so that it motivates others to follow lead as well. Nazifa, coming towards you, and before we conclude today's show, so given the fact that you have had quite a lot of international experience of working on this, how would you then compare and contrast Pakistan's approach to both food insecurity as well as tackling food waste management with that of other countries? And what do you feel are the lessons that we perhaps can learn in this regard, the best international practices that we can adopt so as to tackle these issues?
Yeah. So, if you know that SDG 2, which is zero hunger, that aims to make sure that there's less food insecurity. It makes sure that there's food shortages are curbed, and also there's nutritious food accessibility available to all. So that is the first thing that lays the foundation. And I think globally, European Union, all the countries under the European Union and North American countries, they are having laws and legislations and policies that integrate not only businesses, communities, but also civil society and private organizations, community-driven organizations, to not only incentivize them, cut down the taxes on them in order to have targets that are going to be, associated with food waste and food shortage. So there are huge targets globally. But in Pakistan, we lack those policies. We need to have businesses
maybe
involved.
Even tax grants being
Yes,
given,
yes,
incentives
those
being given to
subsidies
businesses, exactly,
yes,
so as
and
to encourage them.
Definitely. And also there are no distribution mechanisms. So I think we also need to, incentivize the grocers, the departmental stores within our policies in such a way that, they can also inform and, run campaigns and programs which can actually, have the redistribution mechanisms in place so that consumers can buy those things at reduced costs.
Right. Right, Nazifa, your point is noted. On which note, I would like to conclude today's show. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Ms. Sadia, and thank you so much, Ms. Nazifa, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about the growing issue of food wastage and food insecurity as it does exist in the Pakistani society. In this regard, also, we shed light upon how, at a very basic level, this issue is then linked with the issue of climate change, so to speak, as well. If we are to move forward, if we are to, of course, propose solutions in this regard, then we not only need there to be perhaps a greater enforcement of the laws and policies that we do have in place, so as to ensure that not only individuals, rather businesses and corporations, they better comply with food waste management systems. But in this regard, at a very basic level, we also need to equally educate the consumers out there so as to be mindful of their various lifestyle preferences too. In this regard, we generally need to sensitize people about the need to not only store food but also to waste it off in a proper manner. We need to ensure that food wastage at a very basic level is done away with in the Pakistani society, because we need to appreciate this very simple fact, which is that when it comes to food wastage is that one issue which at a very basic level is then linked with the issue of hunger in any society. And until and unless we do away with it, we cannot inevitably strive towards a more equitable and definitely a more healthier world. Thank you for watching The Society. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.